Just a second, and that's it. I just need to click the record button.
Okay.
Good to go.
Thanks, Brian. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Pension Committee and Board September's meeting. We've got a full agenda this morning, and just to let people know that this meeting will be live streamed. Okay, we'll move into apologies. Have we any apologies?
There's apologies from, I think, sorry, I had it written down somewhere. Councillor Balsillie.
Yeah, and Ed Morrison and Hassan from EY.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Have we got any declarations of interest? Nope. Don't see anybody. Nope, that's great. Thank you. Straight into agenda item 3, that's our minutes of our last meeting. Can we agree the minute? For accuracy?
Agreed.
Yep. Is there anything on the minute that's not on the agenda that anyone wants to ask? Nope. Great. Agenda item 4. And that's our annual audit report. Debbie, you going to take this report, please?
Yes, thanks, Adana. Morning, everyone. Just to start off with this report, the annual audit report for 2020-21. This follows on from the audit plan that was set out by Ernst & Young in March and follows all the audit work that's been ongoing with Olga and her team over the last number of months, looking at the accounts and all the backup. So the report is attached in Appendix 1 and gives details of all the work that Ernst & Young and the team have undertaken and what their obligations are, etc. And overall, they intend to issue an unqualified audit opinion. All these are all subject to matters up to being today, going concern, etc. However, the plan is for an unqualified audit opinion to be issued, and on top of the audit opinion, they need a couple of letters, a letter of representation and a letter for those charged with governance, which were also attached as appendices to the report. So there's quite a lot of detail in there once you get all that sort of information, and those letters are issued at the time that and signed by the appropriate people, Adana and Brian, at the time that the accounts are actually signed. Just to say that everything has been done within the timescales that is the normal timescales that are expected, and there were some minor amendments to the accounts following discussion with Olga and her team with presentational, a couple of typos, etc., that were spotted as we went through the audit, and these were all agreed to either leave or change, and there was no disagreement in any of the items that we came across and discussed. So that gives a detail. The report gives details of the process that's been undertaken and what their intended opinion is. It also gives details of materiality levels, which was discussed in the audit plan, that these would be slightly different to previous years because Ernst & Young were internally aligning their materiality with similar pension funds or bodies that they were looking at, and there's 3 audit differences that were highlighted as part of that, which are below materiality, well below materiality, but above the level at which they report to committee. And these audit differences are set out in the report. The largest one is unadjusted difference regarding an undervaluation of investments. These are private market assets who we get the statements for quite late on. So when we close the accounts, we have to take the best information we have. So this item is always an adjustment, and obviously we keep an eye on the materiality of it, and it doesn't the number that is there does not. So the number that is there does not reflect one particular investment. It's a whole number of investments that come to that size. So these are, it is a difference that appears every year. The quantum is always slightly different depending on the market conditions, but it is something, because of the materiality, that we don't intend to adjust. There was also an unadjusted difference of a very small unadjusted difference on estimated accruals, and again that's to do with timing of information that we get from the employers, and an unadjusted difference on unfunded commitment, and that doesn't actually affect the investment number in the account, it's just the disclosure. And again, once again, that is a timing of information. You'll appreciate that when we're trying to close the accounts and get them ready for audit, we have to take a cut-off period of time to do that. We can't keep them open indefinitely, because otherwise we would still be doing the accounts now. So we need to take a cut-off of that. So that's why these differences arise, and the intention is not to make any changes of those on the grounds of materiality. I think that is the main amount to say, apart from the fact that there is also a discussion to be had with regard to some extra work or extra possible fees that Ernst & Young highlight in their report as to be determined. So that is a discussion that needs to be undertaken with Olga and the team. So I'm not aware of what the quantum of that is. I don't know whether Olga can clarify, or whether that will be a discussion for a bit later. But if I could just ask if Olga has got anything to add to what I've had to say, and anything else that she wants to make the committee and board aware of.
Thank you, Debbie. I think that was a very comprehensive summary, so I don't really have a lot to add, to be honest. So hopefully you have read the report. So as Debbie said, we intended to issue unqualified audit opinion. You might notice that we have a number of representation, number of sentences in this report in the square brackets. This is just to reflect how we present all our audit reports in draft to the audit committee. Subsequent to that, we will finalize our audit reports and will submit it to the Audit Scotland for presentation on their website. So all the square brackets will be deleted, and all the sentences, sorry, apologies, it's my voice today. All the sentences will be updated to reflect the latest position. But at the current moment, all audit work materially complete, and our results presented in this audit report and audit differences, we consider this to be final position, so we don't anticipate any changes. So as highlighted in the report, this is our 5th year's appointment. Our appointment terms have been extended for the further 12 months. So next year audit, we still will be the auditors. On the page 4 of the executive summary, you will see we have summarized wider scope positions. This is additional for audit dimensions that we require to report by the Audit Scotland Code of Audit Practice. So you're pleased to see that all areas are green now. We didn't really raise any recommendation this year, so we've been happy. Fund is like with financial sustainability, governance and transparency, value for money, and financial management arrangements. You might recall that in prior year we have raised one recommendation that was just purely in relation to lack of the committee meetings for about 7 months. This is purely was due to COVID. We checked, and basically this year we're happy that the fund have appropriate government arrangements in place, and all the committee were held as normal on a routine basis. Our audit in line with prior year have been completed entirely remotely as a result of the obviously Scottish government restrictions related to COVID-19. It did not impact our audit in any way. All the work was been done on time, as Debbie highlighted. So I want to thank management for their collaboration and allowing us to complete audit work on time. And it's a great achievement, I think, in the current year environment. So as Debbie highlighted, materiality being slightly revised. So in the planning report, our materiality being set at 23.2 million. We being subsequently able to increase this materiality level slightly, just to reflect the net assets year-end position reported in the unaudited account. So materiality for year-end audit procedures presented on page 7 of the report. It's increased slightly, still below the prior level, but it did not change our sample sizes massively, given we always had quite a good carriages given the size of each individual items for each individual investments in our population. I think that's probably the main thing I wanted to report in terms of the main key audit risk has been identified in the audit plan. This all starting from page 11, so management override of controls. This is a standard risk that we identify on all engagement, and again, like our testing didn't identify any issues related to revenue and expenditure recognition. Valuation of complex investment designed as a significant risk. We focus on the investment classified as level 2 and level 3. We appreciate that the number of this investment, for example, level 2, actually related to listed equities. So our risk is mainly focused on any remaining, pretty much any remaining investments that are valuation for which are not publicly available on the quoted markets. As Debbie highlighted, there have been a couple of audit differences identified for private equity, infrastructure, and private debt. This is all in line with prior year. We have that issue on every year since the last 5 years of our appointment. But again, this doesn't affect our audit opinion in any way. So it's just reported to the committee for information. Management property funds is outlined on page 14. That was prior year issue when basically all the valuation reports been presented on the basis of material uncertainty. We happy as auditors that this clause has been removed by the valuers, so that wasn't an issue for this year. So this is just to flag the work has been undertaken in line with prior year, and we happy with the valuation of management property funds, so did not identify any issue in that respect. In line with prior year, on page 16, we outlined our consideration of going concern. So obviously, pension fund accounts prepared in line with CIFA guidance on a going concern basis, but in accordance with auditing standards, with revised auditing standards, we are required to place greater emphasis of management assessment of going concern and perform additional procedures to evaluate the management cash flow forecast provided and adequacy of supporting evidence to support management going concern assessment. So this going concern assessment has been provided all in line with prior year. We're happy that fund remain going concern and it has enough liquid investment in the form of liquid equities in the likely event if pension fund would need to basically realize cash within 3 or 4 days. I think that's probably all I want to say. Just one point in relation to the audit fee. So we flagged that this is TBD, so we will undertake this discussion with management. The reported prior year agreed remuneration of the audit fee, which was about 6,000 last year. This was primarily for additional going concern that was introduced last year. And this year that was much quicker and easier procedure. We were incurred additional time, unfortunately, on the more complex investments, level 3 investment valuation work. This was primarily due to various additional reviews, external reviews, and additional procedures being imposed on the auditors in these areas. We don't anticipate this to be like at the same scale as prior year. But we will just need to undertake this discussion with management. So we'll report this fee hopefully in the audit plan in March 2022 or as soon as the audit fees are agreed with management. But again, I don't anticipate it to be in the same scale as in prior year. We anticipate this to be at much lower level. I think that's pretty much I want to say today. Happy to take any questions from the members of the committee.
Thanks, Olga. Has anyone got any questions, please? John?
Yes, thank you very much, convener. Olga mentioned, I think, the contents of her report, page 13. It's our paperwork, page 30. The first paragraph mentioning the valuation of complex investments particular highlights again the situation of valuation of private equity and infrastructure. Bearing in mind the fact that, we are anticipating a steady reduction in the holding of private equity, particularly, could you or someone expand a little bit on the situation regarding the special valuation of private equity and infrastructure? I can recognise particularly the difficulty there, but since it is down as being a very material issue in the valuation, I'd like to get a little bit more information on that, please.
This is in relation to the audit differences, if I understand the question correctly. Is that correct?
It is in connection with the issue, highlighted issue regarding the difficulty to value the private equity funding in particular, and I'd just like to have some reassurance that in actual fact this is still an acceptable investment, and that also perhaps confirmation that we are actually managing to steadily reduce the holding.
Debbie, I'm happy to cover the first part of the question in relation to the valuation. So basically, the audit procedures that undertake in relation to private equity infrastructure and private debt. So first of all, we get in touch with all investment managers and obtaining confirmation from their side. This is basically being sent to us directly, so we have great level of assurance that this is the investment that should be appearing in the accounts. So this is the first procedure that we do. Audit standards requires to undertake additional procedures and not purely rely on the investment manager's confirmations for this area, given this is unquoted investment. So valuation of this investment are not publicly available on the open market, so we cannot actually check this as opposed to, for example, listed equities, where it's quite easy procedures, and we have internal EY tools developed for these purposes, where we just put the number, like unique investment number, and it just produces a price for us, like at any given point of time. So additional procedures we undertake. We get in touch with basically each fund and obtain the audited financial statements. We then confirming with investment manager what the pension fund, Falkirk pension fund, undertaking in this fund, like as a percentage. And based on the audited financial statements, we recalculate the holding of the, based on Falkirk pension fund percentage, what the holding will be as a percentage of net assets of this fund. We check that audit opinion signs are unqualified, so the auditors were happy, the net assets are presented fairly, and there is no material misstatement. We also, for the investment managers, we obtain quality controls review. So this is the controls that reports in any exceptions in the internal controls of the investment managers. So that gives us additional assurance that they have processes and controls in place that would allow them to value investment effectively. And basically, even though we're not relying on this investment and perform additional procedures in this area, we're happy that they have this process and procedures in place and controls are performing effectively, so they're able to undertake effective valuation in this area. So given all of that procedures performed, we still have a difference. That's not an unusual scenario. As I said, this is a difference we have every 5 years. The problem is with that is just a purely timing difference when the financial statements is being prepared by Justina and Debbie's team, basically by the management of the pension fund. They still don't have the most up-to-date March statements that would give them the value at 31st of March in this private equity, private debt and infrastructure. While when we come to audit these financial statements, this unaudited accounts in July, this is obviously 3 months later, we already have access. This is financial statements for March being prepared. For some of the funds, I might just flag this. We've been actually able to look at the even later, like June statements, just given for some of these funds, this is just how the timings works. They just lag in 1 quarter effectively. So if you look at the valuation at 31st of March statements, it will not give you position at 31st of March. It will give you position at 31st of December. So we have to wait until like further quarter just to cover this lag and making sure that our procedures capturing the most up-to-date information available at the time of we auditing financial statements. So all of that, basically, even though like this is unquoted investment, based on our overall procedures, allowing us to conclude that we're happy with the valuation. And this time in difference that we identify, this is just to flag, this is the difference in time, basically, when the accounts being prepared by management and when the most up-to-date information for 31st of March valuation for these funds are become available to us as auditors. Debbie, I don't know, like if you want to add anything.
Yeah,
No,
thanks,
thank
Olga. Sorry, Councillor Patrick, just to say that overall private equity is reducing, but infrastructure is increasing as we're increasing our valuation. So there will always be, a reasonable amount of in these level 2 and 3 investments that there will be the differences on due to the lags that Olga's pointed out about the statement times.
Yeah,
Does that answer between us answer everything?
I'm grateful to Olga for her response and information, and I'm also grateful for you to confirm that we actually are in a downward trend as far as the private equity is concerned, recognising the timescales that will be required to achieve our ambition there. With your permission, could I refer to another matter? It's actually on the report page 19, our papers, page 36. The final paragraph there refers to collaboration, of course, with Lothian Pension Fund, which is invaluable. But it has said, it talks about there as being the need to terminate a number of existing relationships. Could Debbie or somebody expand on that, please?
Yeah, so an example is one of the fund managers that we may come on in the private section later on that we're looking to come out of, and the joint investment strategy panel have looked at what fund managers we would want to move away from and move to some of the Lothian strategies to kind of increase the collaboration and cost savings. I'm not sure whether somebody will be able to guide me as to whether I'm allowed to say who that is at this stage, or whether we can cover it later on.
I recognise the difficulty. Perhaps my question was not in the correct place. And I wait for a further report later in the agenda. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Convener, just to say that, so I would just point everybody back to, if there's no other questions, to the recommendations and asking to note the annual report, etc. But before I do that, there was an issue raised by Councillor Balsillie this morning about the fact that on page, I'll get the wrong one, I've come away from that now, sorry. On page 93 of the papers and 22 of the accounts, there's the list of the meetings that are attended, and he has noted that a number of the attendance he's not been able to make meetings because they clash with Clackmannanshire Council, and asked for a small note to be inserted underneath the table to reflect this, and so just really wanted to, obviously with Olga on the call as well, because it's need to be agreed with the auditors and with the committee, that if everybody's happy that we make a change just to reflect something similar that's under there, under the table already for Councillor Balsillie.
I certainly agree with that, and it's maybe something we need to look at in future when we're setting dates, because I know it is very difficult for councillors when we have various other meetings, and obviously full council meetings take precedence. So yeah, I'm happy to note that. Is everyone in agreement with that?
Yep.
No objections from our side either. So
Okay, thank you. I think Councillor Convener, it does seem to clash with the Clackmannanshire council meetings very regularly from what he's said. So it's a difficult one.
Yeah.
So that's really all from me, just pointing everybody to the recommendations on page 13 of your papers, and asking to agree the letter of representation and the response to those addressed with governance as well.
Okay, if there's no other
Agreed.
questions, happy to agree.
Yeah.
Thank you. Just before we move on to agenda item 6, we've got two people calling in this morning. Can you state who you are, please?
Hi there, it's Albert Chen from
Oh,
Lothian
excellent.
dialing in.
That's
Sorry,
great.
my WebEx isn't working on my laptop, I'm afraid. So
That's fine. Thanks, Albert.
So this is Jennifer Welch. Same issue. I can't get the sound to work via WebEx.
Okay. Did you get that, Brian?
I didn't quite catch the second one, sorry.
It's Jennifer Welch, Brian.
Oh, Jennifer, sorry, didn't recognize. I saw you earlier in the call, that's why I was confused. Thanks a lot.
Okay.
Just while I'm on, so I see that Simon's got his hand up, convener.
Yeah, I see that. Simon?
Yeah, sorry, I was just trying to get in before you finished the last item. Just to say, I think it would be really good if the minutes reflected the efforts of the team to have this, have everything done and the audit completed and the accounts signed off by the end of September. I think that's a phenomenal achievement under the circumstances that everybody's been working, both within the team and also at EY.
Thanks, Simon. Totally agree with that.
Thank you.
Okay. Before we move on again, can I just say that Councillor Pat Reid has left the council, and we have a new member on the committee this morning replacing Pat, and that's Councillor David Aitchison. Welcome, David.
Oh, welcome. Sorry, I've got a sore throat as well. It seems to be catching. So welcome everybody, and a sharp learning curve for myself, but I'm sure I'll pick up as I go along, and I'm very happy to be here.
Very much so. There's quite a few trainings coming up in the near future that you'll probably get invites to. But thanks for joining us. Okay, moving on. Where are we at now? Agenda item 6, and that's general governance with Debbie. Oh no, sorry, Brian jumped right in there. Agenda item 5. Hand over to you, Brian. Thanks.
Thanks, convener. I've been quite happy I just skipped over it, but here we go. Good morning, everybody. I think maybe just to recognise at the outset, for an item taking up some 150 pages of the agenda, this in practice is relatively straightforward. As noted in the previous item, the accounts have been audited and by the conventional date rather than the expanded COVID date, and are set to be unqualified, and there's been no significant change since the draft accounts came before you. If I could just supplement Simon's kind words there and pay tribute to my staff, in particular Debbie, Justina and Alistair. just noting the power of work that goes into producing those tightly packed 150 pages, and also within the compressed and challenging time frame that's required. So my thanks, as always, to them. And having said that, convener, I would propose just to take you straight to the recommendations, section 2, and probably just supplementing them with what was agreed in the previous item in terms of the adjustment for Councillor Bilsilly's attendance, which is a minor consideration, but just for the record, I think we would just need to capture it here as well as in the previous item. So I'll stop there, convener, and if there are any questions, which no doubt will be beyond my technical abilities, I've got Justina and Debbie readily on hand to help address them. So I'll stop there, as I say, convener. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. Yeah, I too want to say thanks, because obviously we've got a small team at Falkirk and they have been under quite incredible pressures to get this work done on top of everything else. So yeah, totally appreciate the hard work that's gone in to getting this report across the line in the time that you have done it. So thank you. Do we have any questions on the report? No, I think we had a really good going over it at our last committee. So happy to accept recommendations.
Agreed.
Thank you. Okay, we're now moving on to agenda item 6. That's with yourself, Debbie.
Thank you, convener. So this agenda item is general governance matters, which is just to kind of update the committee and board on a number of items that affect the pension fund and the administration of the pension fund. First one noted is about procurement. We have been undertaking a joint procurement for voting and engagement. I think we've had a voting supplier for some time, but we've not had an engagement specialist, and this was agreed a number of months ago with the committee that we would look to engage a voting and engagement specialist, and we have done a joint procurement with Lothian and Fife pension funds, and the result of that is that we are literally getting the final paperwork, the final legal documents sorted now, with the hope to start the contract on the 1st of October. And the successful candidate was Hermes EOS, who are the incumbent provider for Lothian and Fife pension funds, and they scored by some margin the highest score on quality and pricing when combined. The cost to the fund for the voting and engagement services will be 90,000 per annum, and that's broadly as we budgeted it for. I think I previously noted in my last report at the last meeting that we've also signed a memorandum of understanding with a view to, over the coming months, look at joint procurement with Lothian and Fife for global custody services. So that will be undertaken over the next wee while. The next item is that annual deadline we have for the annual benefit statements to go out, and at the time of writing, the vast majority of those had gone out. As the committee and board are aware, SEPA had their cyber attack, which has caused them some issues with getting the data ready. I understand it's just about ready. I'm hoping to get it uploaded next week to iConnect so we can then start reviewing it and producing the benefit statements. But because of the number that were involved and the time scales that it was going to be late, we've said we'd try and get them out by the end of October. We reported this to the regulator, and they came back along with the reasons and the work done. We've worked closely with Jennifer and her team to understand when we're getting the data and what they're telling their members. So the regulator was quite happy that they did not plan to take any action at this time. At the time of writing, we were in the late stages of getting the final benefit statements out for Falkirk Council. These have been and should have arrived, hopefully now already. And the very last, I think there were some councillor statements went out yesterday. So that, apart from SEPA, that really concludes the annual benefit statements process, which is always a tight deadline for us as well, and especially in the COVID times, it's not always been that easy to get information as quickly as we may have done in the past. The next item is a National Fraud Initiative update, and I've really just been giving an update regularly on that. There are we undertake this every couple of years, and there was 2 cases that we're still looking into, neither of which are significant. The combined is less than £10,000, but we are still looking into that. And it was also just to note that it's not the only form that we undertake for fraud. Our data is reviewed annually by our mortality specialist as well, and who look for evidence of those in the data set not being alive. So that will be undertaken shortly in the autumn. The next item is about the COVID deaths, and just really to say that there was a couple of spikes this year in July and February, but not nearly as pronounced as the previous year, the spikes that were in April, May and August, September. So the deaths that we are experiencing are not greatly out of line with previous years. However, the mortality information will be going to Club Vita, our specialist, to be looking at in the next month or so. The final items, there's not really anything to report in the legislative roundup. The corporate governance just gives you the details of our voting and our engagement through LAPF, and as you can imagine, a lot of that is focused on climate change. And finally, just Adana mentioned about the training opportunities, and I know some of you were able to join. A few of us went down to Leeds for some training recently and face to face, which was lovely to see everybody actually in person. And there are some more opportunities coming up with quite a number of you signed up for the fundamentals training, and also the Scottish Officers Group are undertaking some training over the next wee while. So hopefully I will be seeing you all at those various events that are coming over the next few months. So unless there's any questions, convener, just really wanted to note the contents of the report.
Thanks, Debbie. Has anyone got any questions? No. I would just like to add at this time that obviously, as I said earlier, our pension team is very small. There's a lot of work, there's a lot of pressures, and there's been a bit of movement. Debbie is stepping back as manager, so at the moment we've been advertising for a manager, and the closing date I think is today for that. But we're hoping that we will not lose Debbie, and that's ongoing work. I'd also like to draw your attention to Brian, who's going to be putting his feet up soon. Brian Smale has indicated that he will be retiring next March. So he's gave us plenty of notice, so there will be changes within the team going forward. But hopefully in the next 6 months, it'll give us the opportunity to get someone, not to replace Brian, because I don't think that's possible, but certainly to do his job as he goes into pastures new, and very jealous at this moment in time. So thanks, Brian, in the future, and hopefully moving forward we'll be able to recruit for the team and we'll get things back up and running. Has anyone got any questions? Nope. Happy to note the report. Agreed? Brilliant. Thanks, everyone. We'll now move the agenda item 7, market review and fund manager performance. Albert, are you going to take this one, or Bruce?
Yeah, I'll take the first paper, and then I think Bruce will talk on the second paper about the managers.
Okay.
Okay. So just looking at, so I have it as page 266. The committee and board asked to note recent market developments, the fund's strategic allocation, the fund's performance, and the monitoring activity. So in terms of market developments over the quarter, equity markets performed strongly with positive returns across most sectors, with information technology, healthcare, and energy the strongest. Utilities was the one exception, posting a marginally negative return sector-wise, perhaps reflecting the strong surge in energy commodity prices over the quarter. In bond markets, yields fell modestly, having risen the quarter previously. So government bond markets generated modestly positive returns. And looking forward, the ongoing debate is around the prospect of ongoing inflation. So concern about whether inflation will be transitory or potentially a bit more structural and a bit more longer lasting. So market participants are looking closely at what central banks will be doing with regards to interest rates. In terms of fund strategy, on page 268, we show a recent position of the fund and its various mandates as at the 20th of August. That's table 2. And that table shows the relative position of all the policy groups relative to their strategic targets. So slight overweight to equities, an underweight to real assets, underweights to non-gilt debt, LDI, and overweights to cash and the other category comprising the diversified growth mandate. There's obviously ongoing work to address some of those underweights. So there is work and transactions underway to reduce the underweight to LDI, to gilts, with transactions from the other mandates. In terms of fund returns under Section 5, just very briefly, 5.3, the total fund returned 5.1% over the quarter, just behind the benchmark of 5.6%. Looking at the longer term returns in 5.4, the fund has increased delivered returns of 7.8% per annum since September 2001, marginally ahead of the benchmark return of 7.7, and over the 5-year period, a decent return in absolute terms of just shy of 9% per annum, behind the benchmark of 9.7% per annum. And that was all I was going to say in terms of market developments and fund strategy. I was going to leave the monitoring discussion to the next paper for Bruce to cover. But convener, if there are any questions on this paper, happy to take them now.
Thank you, Albert. Do we have any questions at this time? Nope. Happy to note the recommendations? Agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Very quiet this morning. Okay, we're now moving into the exclusion of public. So our live stream will now stop as we go into our private affairs. Does anyone wish to take a break at this moment?
No.
Just want to carry on?
Yeah.